I'm Lorinda. I have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Elizabeth Ayuk-Etang, correct? And she has quite an impressive CVA, about 6 pages long, but I'll give you her bio. She is a Cameroonian of English expression. In Cameroon, there are French-speaking and English-speaking citizens. She's a Pan-African, a gender advocate, an associate professor of African literature, and chair of the Department of English at the University of Buea, Cameroon. She holds a PhD in Black women's writings and ecofeminism from the University of Yaoundé 1, Cameroon. She has published extensively in peer-reviewed journals. She has 21 publications to her credit, and she is co-author of a book. She has authored book chapters on the status of the Black woman. Her research interest is on cultural studies, Black women discourse, as well as women and development in Africa. She is a recipient of several awards, amongst which are the African Women Development Fund, CODIS-RIA's Higher Education Policy Initiative, University of Michigan African Presidential Scholar Fellowship. She was also awarded the Janet Hennessy Award of the Arts. At present, she is a visiting professor at UCSB. She is also part of our church family, along with her husband, Richard, and their triplet children, Efa, Ekong, and Ekap. Please welcome Dr. Elizabeth Ayuk-Etang. Well, it's been so good getting acquainted with you this morning, and it's quite a voyage that has brought you here. Thank you so much for all that you and your family have done for St. Michael's and for sharing your story with us here today. To start, where were you born and what was your childhood like?
Thank you so much, Lorinda. I'm so happy. I think it's a privilege for me to be part of the St. Michael's family. I was born in Cameroon, in Central Africa, to a poor family, farming people. And I grew up as a little girl in Cameroon, was so enthusiastic about education and about life. And of course, I used to go to farm with my parents, harvest fruits, pineapples, mangoes, and I eat, and that's how we grew up. I used to sell some, carry some on my head, and walk around the streets selling to raise money for my siblings and I to go to school, and that's how I went to school. And I lost my dad 25 years ago, and I lost my mom 1 year ago. That's a little brief bio about me, my childhood. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It sounds like you had a strong connection with the land through your childhood with the farm.
Yes, I think so, because, Africans are farming people. And of course, when you work on the farm, you're connected to the environment, you're connected to the land, you're all over the place, just the environment with you. Even just tilling the ground, there is a way my grandmom taught us, when you till, you sing to the rhythm of tilling and then making the ridges and even planting. So I grew up in that kind of a situation whereby I used to enjoy when we go to the farm. And the days I don't go to the farm, I feel like I'm out of place. Mm-hmm. So that connectivity with the natural environment has always been part of me, and that is why on my CV, you realize that I have an interest in ecofeminism, which has to do with the relationship of women and nature. We'll get to that when I think you started asking me something about my research, so when we get that, I'm going to talk more on that. Thank you.
Wonderful, good. And so can you tell us, to change the topic a little bit, can you tell us your religious and spiritual background in your childhood?
Thank you. This whole idea of religiosity, I keep smiling when I'm asked that question because I'm a Christian from childhood. I grew up as a Catholic Christian. I was baptized at the age of 7. And I took, in Catholic Church, for those who've been there before, don't know what I mean, I took the first Holy Communion at the age of 8, and I was confirmed at the age of 10. This is a Catholic ritual that must be followed. And when I grew up, after about 30 years, I switched to the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon, where my husband, Richard, fellowships, and Richard and I have been going to the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon. It's true, once in a while we go back to Catholic Church, but we are very liberal. So when I came to UCSB, I saw St. Michael. I thought it was a Catholic church, and we didn't see any Presbyterian church. So I got here, and I started fellowshipping at St. Michael, and I discovered that it was an Episcopal church, which to me, church is not the building or the name, but it's the people you commune with. And I saw love in St. Michael. I visited St. Mike once, which is a Catholic church, and the priest has my contact. He kept calling me. But the love I found in St. Michael with beautiful people like you. Tony is here. I don't want to tell this church what Tony has been doing to me and my family, but she has been putting food on our table since we came here. And I can't take it for granted. And many other people. I have friends. I can't name names because if I have to do that, they will not leave this place today. Each and every one of you has touched my life. I've touched my life in one way or the other. Just maybe through your smiles, just winking, just telling me how nice we look, and that's, to me, is enough. And so it has made my faith to grow. And there is one thing that is very thrilling with St. Michael, the message, and not only the message, but the dialogue. I saw democracy in this church. The dialogue after the message. And then it's like, what do you think? What are you thinking about? This is what I think. And I'm like, does that happen in any church? Either we are shouting, singing somewhere, or and then we finish with our normal rituals, and then you go get your seat. But I saw a church where the priest comes right down to the little children, and it's like, can we just get together? Communion is not some ritual, but it is joining the Lord's table, Christ's table, and eating. And I'm like, oh, I thought the kids are supposed to go through a ritual, the doctrine before the commune or they get. And he said, no, that is not it. And it opened my mind to another level. It took me 5 steps ahead of my thoughts as far as religion is concerned and Christianity.
That's wonderful. I share a lot of your feelings about St. Michael's.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about your family and how you and Richard first met? And what can you share about the birth of your children? Richard's here.
He is, sure.
So,
I will start by saying that I grew up in Africa, again, where coronation, marriages, funerals are very, very respected, and it brings out a lot of people. So Richard and I met in one of the funeral ceremony. I moved from one town. Richard was from another town. I didn't know Richard, but Richard's cousins were my friends. I was friends with Richard's cousin. So when we met at that funeral, before I met them, my friend saw me because I had called to find out where they were sitting. So when she saw me, she got up, and then she moved closer to me. So while Richard was sitting with them, Richard said, "Oh, look at that beautiful buffalo coming." In Richard's language, a buffalo is a beautiful girl. So that's the expression he used. So I now, when I saw My friend sitting with Richard about 30 years ago, 25 years back, when my friend met me, I said, "Oh, who is that elegant man you're sitting with?" It was a coincidence. I didn't know him. So my friend screamed and said, "Oh, I was saved." And I thought that as an African woman, a man is supposed to work for your love, not the other way around. So when my friend said it to Richard and said, "Oh, my friend admired you when she came here," she said, "Who is that elegant man?" I refused and I decided not to go for Richard. Richard kept coming for 2 years and I said, "No, I don't want to be that woman that admires a man and say it." So I did not. But after 2 years, Richard was going through divorce with a first wife. Richard studied abroad. He went to Sorbonne in Paris. He got married to a woman. They had 3 kids. And so they had just relocated back to Cameroon. And then the woman said she was not ready to live in Africa. She wanted to go back to Europe. So they were going through a phase of divorce. I didn't know him. So 2 years later, apparently, it's like the divorce went through and Richard started running behind me. And I said, "Okay, let me give it a try." Then I noticed a very nice man in Richard. So that's how I fell for him. And for the kids, thank you. And for the kids, back home, women or children don't go to school easily because you have to work for your parents to use the money and sponsor your male siblings. And so I was that kind of a woman that I wanted to go to school. And my dad had actually said he would want me to go to school. So Richard now stepped into my life and pushed and helped to sponsor me in school for my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD. And so going through school at that time, I could not make babies. And at the end of the day, when I tried to have babies, it was not easy for me now after 35 to have babies. So we resorted to IVF, in vitro fertilization. So you see these kids here, they are very cherished because God just gave them to me. I can't tell you more. Not everybody that does IVF succeed, but I did. I didn't only I had 3 with 2 sexes. So I keep thanking God for that. And we had them when we went to India, Mumbai. So we had to travel from Africa to India to do this. And I had them. And the reason I had to do this was because, in Africa, motherhood is an honorable institution. If you're a woman and you don't have a child, they see you as an outcast. Your husband's relatives or your own relatives will say, "But what is all about making money, going up and down, going to school, but don't having a child?" So you're not part of that community if you're not a wife and if you don't have a child. So despite the fact that I had gone to school, for me to be a complete woman in Africa, I had to search for babies. And that is how I went and had them. It's a little bit of my private life, but I'm happy to share with this community. Thank you so much, and because the community has been so wonderful to my kids. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And earlier this morning, you shared with me the meaning of the names of each of your children.
Yes. It's not a given to have a set of triplets. It is not. It is not. So I kept praying for them. And I want to tell you, we are very prayerful in our family. Before God brought Tony to us, we've been praying for food. We've been praying for many things in this community. And so that is one of the things I did. And I told God, I said, "If you give me children, I'm going to give them back to you." And so their names, Akap-Mande means God's gift or gifts from God. Ekong, Mande in my dialect means God's love or love from God. And Efa-Mande means God's blessing. You can put it the other way, blessings from God. And so that is how I had to give them this name to tell God that these are all coming from you and I give you back to them. And so you're going to help me to see how I will take care of these kids. And so that is the meaning of their names.
That's so powerful.
Thank you.
Well, to change to the larger picture and shift away from your family, what is the political state of Cameroon today?
I think Cameroon is described now in the international scene as a war zone. It's a warring zone because the Anglophones, which are the English speaking, and the Francophones, there is a problem of minority status. The Anglophones are just 2 regions out of the 10 regions of Cameroon. And being the 2 regions, they feel that they are English speaking, they are little, they are not, so they are being marginalized, they are being oppressed as far as the national budget of the national cake of the country is concerned. They are not placed in positions, there are many other things they clamored for. And in 2016, the lawyers took into the streets because most of the judges in their court were Francophones that don't even understand their culture nor their systems. And they keep bringing them. Meanwhile, they had English-speaking judges. And teachers also followed because they thought that they're not being respected. Even their curriculum is being influenced by French and many other problems that were raised. And so eventually politicians got into it and they said, we wanted a separation from the rest of the country. So these people who wanted separation were termed as terrorists. And so now the war broke out and they started fighting and killing. Blood has been shed and is still being shed. Women are being raped, they are kidnapped. My husband has been kidnapped twice while we were in Cameroon, and they asked for huge amount of money before they will be able to release him. Some of them, when they kidnap, they beat you under your leg, they beat you with cutlasses and other things, and they make life horrible and miserable. And so people have gone through that. One of the days there was shooting during the convocation, I think here you call it commencement, in our university, and I was trying to get into the car to drive and then to see how I can get out of there. It got to a point I had to abandon the car as I was running. This gunshot came, and I don't know if it was the gun that got me or I felt and a car knocked me, and so my bone was broken. And if you look at my hand, there is a mark here. And so running, they had to take me to the hospital. There is still iron here because they had to pull the bones together, especially on the wrist, and then they clip it with the iron. So those are some of the challenges that I too got into as a result of the war. And I lost my mom last year, that's 1 year ago in 2021, due to the war in Cameroon because she was hypertensive. And so one of the days in our neighborhood, the shooting, so when she heard the gun sounds and my kids came running all over the place, lying on the floor, my mom was just like, and then she fell. So we rushed to her, struggled to massage and give our first aid, but we couldn't. And then with all the gunshots around the neighborhood, we couldn't take her immediately to the hospital. So we struggled, and by the time it got, quieter, we now put her into the car and then took her to the hospital. She was on life support, but I think a day later or so she died. So
I'm so sorry.
So that happened, and I think the war has had its toll on us.
Yes. You must have suffered a lot of trauma, you and your children.
Yeah, especially my kids. A 5-year-old in their school was shot one day on the head, and the skull came out, everything, the brain, and the pictures is all over the place on social media. And I was on that day, I was driving to drop them in school, and I met the scene, and there were a lot of military around, tussling, everything. And so I came back home, I was panicking, and my kids told me we'll never go to that school anymore. And school became some kind of, I don't know, but I think at one point they were mummified. They didn't know what to do with their life. But I thank God for God, because God does not abandon his own, and that's why we're still alive.
I'm so glad you are safer here.
Thank you.
I hope.
I think so.
Our own schools have their problems
I think so.
too. So to bring it to today, what sort of hardships did you and your family face, and how did you connect with UCSB? You talked a little bit about the hardships in Cameroon.
Right, right. So I think I've already spoken about the hardship my family and I went through. My connection with UCSB, I was the only female chair of my department and for the entire school, the School of Arts, Faculty of Arts as we call it back home. And with about 2,000, or about 5,000 students and about 75 or 50 to 75 colleagues. I was the only female administrator, and so I had this difficulty in discussing in most of the administrative meetings, because as a woman, whatever you say, they don't take it seriously. For instance, you might come in a meeting and you say, oh, I think we need these students to be doing seminars every other week to strengthen their research ability or something, and nothing is being said. And a male colleague just said, we need seminars in this place and we need to engage our graduate students to start taking seminars. Oh yeah, you see, like Professor this just said. So that is something you had said before, but nothing was said about it. And since it's a male colleague that said, oh yeah, so it's always, so I kept having that. And so I belong to the African Feminist Initiative group. I think the headquarters is in Pennsylvania, so it is worldwide. And so all feminist scholars are, registered into that group. So one day I just went in there and I told them, I need a mentor on emotional intelligence, somebody that is going to guide my emotions in some of the administrative meetings, that I'm not going to flare out, I'm going to. So that is how I got to know Professor Kumkum Bafnane. She is a UCSB scholar, faculty, and she's part of that initiative. So I started working with Professor Kumkum Bafnane, and she kept, I think most of the things she advised me to do worked. Because she asked me, are you the only female? I said, no, there are other female administrators in different schools. She said, can you guys get together, share your challenges, see how you can work through this? And we started gradually, and eventually it started working. And I saw even my dean, who was my direct boss, start, and being open to me. And so, but then when the crisis in Cameroon got to a certain level, I had to apply to, there is a program in the US known as the International Institute of Education Scholar Rescue Fund. And there is also another organization known as the Scholars at Risk. So I applied to both organizations or institutions, and one of the things you do is you send them your credentials, you send them your CV, they ask you, you feel. So one of the days I was talking with Professor Kumkum, I told her, I said, see, with the situation, I've applied for this program. Unfortunately, I was accepted. The day I saw the email from them, congratulations, Elizabeth, you've been accepted as a Scholar Rescue Fund Fellow for this year. I was like, oh my gosh. And those were the people who relocated my family and I to the US. And Professor Kumkum Bafnane now had to discuss with UCSB for UCSB to be my host. If not, maybe I would have gone to Pennsylvania, I would have gone to, other universities. But since I had Kumkum here and I discussed with Kumkum said, okay, I'm going to talk with the university. If they are ready to host you, then you come over. And that's how I found myself in UCSB, and to St. Michael, because I keep saying St. Michael, because St. Michael has made my stay in this place worthy.
Wonderful, and I'm so glad they saw fit to rescue you with all your expertise and knowledge and experience. This is very important.
Right.
Is there anything that the church can do better to support you, your family, and the people of Cameroon?
I think the church has done a lot for me. Just looking at Tony and Tony smiling at me is enough love. The first thing we came here, we needed love. And we've had love, we found love. I have friends that visit me. I have Ali, I have Hesha. In fact, I have people that see it and find out how I'm faring with my family. When I come here every Sunday, the church has already done a lot for me and my immediate family. And even the family back home, the fact that I'm alive, I think is something. So I think the church continue to pray for us, and then maybe to pray for the people back home. Before I came here, we used to be 17 or 18 of us in my house, because when the war broke out, these people were internally displaced persons that came and lived with me in my house. And when I had to leave and come to the US, there was a vacuum because they didn't know where to go to. But you see, they are still surviving. And even then, we keep reaching out to them back home with little that we get from the people around us. We send them little dresses, we send them food, and then shelter. We try to see how we can pay for their rent, but that's fine. I think we just need prayers to be strong and to continue to do the things we can do.
So if you send things to your family members in Cameroon, do they actually get to them?
Yes, they do.
They're not stolen in the mail?
No, they aren't.
Or
they
funds?
They do. They do.
Yeah. So there are like 12 people you left behind from your household.
Yeah, and Richard's family as well. You know, in Africa, your family is not your nuclear family. You have extended family. Mm-hmm. You have even people that, because you're able to provide them 1 square meal, they become your family and they join your house. So recently, Richard's younger brother I think he was shot, or they took a gun to his house and said, we want money. We want money. Your relatives have gone to the US. Can you give us some money? The boy said, I don't have money. That's my brother who went to the US and not me. Mm-hmm. And they fired the gun in the house. And after that, they left. They said, that is warning. We're coming back for you. And then we called them and said, can you relocate? Mm-hmm. Can you just move and maybe go somewhere else? So it keeps happening. But we thank God for God again, because they would have shot somebody and not just warning them, but they did not kill them. So God is alive, and He takes care of His own.
Wow, that's really something. How has this experience informed your faith, and is there anything else you would like to share?
I think my experience as a scholar from Cameroon has made me to grow wiser, maybe just a step wiser. I have a collection of poems. I've been writing. I'm a creative writer. I'm a poet. I've been writing books, but I suspended all of that. But I have a collection of poems that recounts most of these stories through poetry that I'm telling you. And I want to tell you, I'm dedicating that poem to Tony, that collection of poems. Because when I lost my mom and I came here, she held my kids and she said, you can call me grandma. And so I just said the book, it was soon, I'm editing it right now. I think we'll share it with this public. And I said to the mother I met. So, and now I think my critical mind is at work. When I write, I don't just write for writing's sake, but now I'm committed in my writing because the experiences I've had, I want to put it down. Because when I do that, it conscientizes me and my public and my society, my community.
The world needs to hear your story.
Sure. Sure. I'm sharing it here, and I will always share it because I know that is just, it has become part of my life. So I keep sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about your area of study, which is ecofeminism? Can you tell us what that is and how you came to that?
Oh, Lorinda, thank you so much. You keep coming back to this ecofeminism stuff. I just want us to know that ecofeminism is a concept and a movement that started in 1974 by a French writer, François Debon, that in her book, Le Féminisme et la Mort, she talks about the death of nature. And other critics picked on that, like Caroline Merchant. They said ecofeminism is linked, is talking about the relationship that women shares with nature. And the relationship that women share with nature has to do with the marginalization of women is interconnected to the domination of nature. So nature is dominated, women are marginalized. So there is an interconnection or interconnectivity between that relationship, that bond. And other writers like Nestra King comes up to say, ecofeminism has to do with two important concepts of the world, feminism and ecology, and bringing them together to talk about their marginalization and domination. So the marginalization of women, linking them to the domination of nature. And ecofeminists are preaching that they cannot be, women cannot be free of marginalization if nature is not freed of domination. So environmentalists now, they are working with feminists to see how women could be free from marginalization, while the environment is freed from domination. I think basically that is what ecofeminism is all about. But again, if you look at ecofeminism, we have two arms of ecofeminism, the physical and the spiritual arm. The physical arm has to do with women's reproductive rights or their role. They say women are physically linked to nature through their fecundity, through their reproductive right. And if you look at the physical build of a woman, it looks like that of nature. The hilly and sloping nature of nature can be linked to the boobs, the bums of a woman. So when you put it there, nature looks like, like woman. So there is that relationship. And spiritually, through their eco-spirituality, the goddesses, gods of fertility, and you name them. So when you go to the Greek mythology, you go to the African mythology, we have all this connectivity. So ecofeminism is a very interesting aspect that deals with race, because it looks at the domination of minority, people of color. So there is race, there is gender issues, sexuality, and you name them. So my research interest has been on that. And on Wednesday, I gave a talk on environmental justice to the Global Studies Department of UCSB, and I actually touched on the different spaces that, because of maybe people's status, the different locales, different spaces that people live, and I use ecofeminism as the key lens to analyze some works from Black women writers.
Thank you. Very timely area of study.
You're welcome.
So now we invite questions and comments from everyone else. Yes, please.
What are some of the other writers besides the founder, or other areas that you would recommend exploring related to ecofeminism in addition to your own work?
Okay. You mean other writers?
Writers, activists, are there some?
It's ecofeminism is an umbrella term that has to do with so much as far as women-nature relationship is concerned. You have Carol Warren, you have, there are a lot, I can't just, start, but you have so many. If you want, I can actually give you a list of writers that you might want to read. Carol Warren actually talks about women getting closer to nature than men. And in one of her case studies from Africa, she said that women are closer to nature by men due to their reproductive roles, Like in Africa, they do the nurturing, they do the cleaning, so they are always in contact with nature. And one of her case studies in Kenya, I think she said, when men and women were taken to the forest to identify trees and plants and their names, and women were able to identify 231 or so, I might not be very exact, plants and their names, while men were only able to identify about 90. Why do women? Because they are always in connection with nature and the environment. But I'm going to give you a list of other writers that you can read to get an insight of ecofeminism.
Could you print a number of those lists so we could each have one?
Thank you. I will do that, Tony.
Thank you.
Anything for you. Anything for you.
I have to say that it's been a pleasure to have you as part of our community. And your open spirit, you give just as much love as you've received. So
Thank you so much.
You've been so welcoming to us and so embracing of
Thank
us
you.
too. So, we
Thank you.
see God working in you in great ways and your family.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Elizabeth, are you hopeful that Cameroon will resolve its civil war and remain, that the region, it will remain the same country with the same regions, or do you think it will split up?
Thank you so much. I think that is my wish. That is my wish, because when we talk about war, you don't know what war is all about. There is killing, there is rape, there is insecurity, there is all kinds of things that you cannot imagine. So war is not a good thing, and I pray that Cameroon should resolve its problem so that things should be normal. Secondly, the reason this war has not come to an end, I want to think, is because there haven't been genuine dialogue. We need genuine dialogue, and we know that when there is a war going on, for you to call for ceasefire, there must be the two parties coming together, and there should be a grace part. But these, they have just been, they say there is a national dialogue, and they call just the one party, and they sit and they take decision and say, we have decided that. So we need genuine dialogue for us to have a truce in Cameroon. So, and I wish that it should be done. I've abandoned my students. I had so many doctoral students and master students I used to work with. I tried to work with them while here, and as scholars or professors, our achievements are in our students when they come up to represent you. And when they can't represent you, then you don't have them. So I've been praying, if things work out well for me, maybe to go back and meet them. But if you ask me, like right now, I can't go back because the war is still on. So I pray for it to come to an end so that life could be normal, and we can also be reunited with our family back home. Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what's the relationship between ecofeminism and the indigenous food sovereignty movement? Is there any relationship between ecofeminism and the food sovereignty movement all over the world?
And the
Especially the indigenous food sovereignty movement. Like here in the United States, there's been a lot of political effort around indigenous people trying to get back control over their food supply. For example, in the Navajo Nation, the Navajo Indians are trying to reassert their connection to their food supply, to farming.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm very happy with your question. My PhD thesis, or you call it dissertation year, was titled Ecofeminism, Reclaiming Their Inheritance, Black Women Writings and Ecofeminism. It takes me to your question about the indigenous people and their food protection. Yes, and in that work, I actually showed how Black women are more connected to nature than men. And their connectivity to nature talks about their food supplies. And there is a chapter that I actually show the proportion of women and their sustainability, the sustainability of their economy through subsistence farming and the protection of their food. And that is what is keeping the African economy if you go to FAO, you get that as proof of saying that the economy the agricultural economy of Africa is being sustained by women through subsistence farming. The little things, the crops they grow after 3 months, they sow, they consume some, they protect some. So the indigenous people contribute, and there is a lot of connectivity between women, nature, so the food and plants become part of that. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today, Dr. Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lorinda. Thank you, St. Michael, for this wonderful opportunity to let me tell you a little bit about myself and my family, and to let you know how I feel about this community. I think it's so lovely. Tony, please, I need a hug from you.